Hi, I'm Sarah Fletcher, and I'm really excited today to interview Ranting Poet Ginger John. Nice to be here today.
Yes, very nice.
And my first question for you is a bit of a simple one, because you were a ranting poet, so what made you want to rant?
Well, actually, I wanted to be the singer of a punk rock band. That's what I wanted to be. They'll all tell you they wanted to be Joe Strummer, the lead singer of The Clash, which is about right, you know what I mean? But then I heard people like John Cooper Clarke, and I went, "All right, that's stuff like that's funny." And then it started off with there was an article in the NME and all that, and then I heard about Seething Wells and Attila the Stockbroker first, and I sent one of my poems to Seething Wells, and he printed it in Molotov Comics. It was called Valhalla, and that was the first thing I ever got published by Swells. And then I met him at Brixton, the White Horse in Brixton. We met there, and he was doing a gig with Benjamin Zephaniah, who was another ranting poet. And we got on. I started doing gigs, and then it all took off, sort of thing. Yeah, I gigged with. I didn't do the circuit that a lot of ranting poets did, the university circuit, which is quite safe. I was on the punk rock circuit with the punk bands. I played with bands like Peter and the Test Tube Babies and Icons of Filth, things like that, which was quite good because I wasn't preaching to the converted, because most students knew, about politics and what was right and what was wrong, but the punks, they were still recruiting them for the National Front and BNP sort of things, and it was putting a political point over to them, but in a funnier sort of way, so they got the point, sort of thing, and I think it did quite well.
Interesting. So when you look at your main inspiration, like what your poems are about, do you think politics is one of the big ones?
No, not at all. It's just you just somebody says a line or something, you go. I heard a line. It was on something, and he said, "Land of hope and tarnished glory, my old man once voted Tory." And I went, "Oh, I like that." So, and it just gave me an idea and sparks off an idea and all that sort of thing. Some of them that I do are a joke. I do a poem called "Me, I'm Green," and it's about the environment and all that sort of thing, and how you should change your ways, not use aerosols and stuff like that. And the punchline to it is, "Me, I'm green as an Eskimo Zanki." And it's just anything. You see something, you something on the radio or a television or a film, and it just kicks off and off you go.
It's interesting that you actually brought up the role of humour in your poetry, because on one of the pamphlets I saw you advertised on, you were called a poet and a comedian.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the role of humour in your poetry? Is it to make it accessible, or just because you enjoy it?
Yeah. But if you can get the point of view over of politics without being ramming it down people's head. I did a really big thing in Manchester, and Granada were there, and they said, "He's a bit political, that Ginger John, isn't he?" And what I did a joke. I went, "The general election's coming up, and I want you all to vote Labour." I said, "I know." I said, "But you've got to look on voting Labour like wiping your arse. You don't want to do it, but there's no alternative." And it's that sort of jokey sort of stuff. Not being po-faced about it and all that sort of thing. And plus the audience that I used to play for, basically, were not really interested in... They were into coming out for a night out and enjoying themselves. But I still got my point of view over as well.
It's interesting, even when you say things like audience I used to play for, it evokes, in gigs, it evokes music and things like that. When you started writing what you were writing, did you consider it poetry, or a lot of the ranting poets just call them rants and rather than poems?
No, I don't. I honestly, I never ever, hold my hand up, never read poetry books. I know songs, and they had a thing in very early in the late 60s, they had a thing called rugby songs, and I used to learn them off by heart to tell them to my mates, but they're very rude and not for family entertainment. But that got me into it. But I just had this thing about, I don't know what it was. The only one that's ever said the same thing that I think. when I write stuff, I feel like there's somebody's telling it me. Paul McCartney said the same thing. He said, when I write, he said, it's like somebody's whispering in your ear. Oh, here you go, David. La, 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 la. All right. And you write it down. It just comes to you. Voices in my head. Well,
there's actually a theory based on that. Did you know, called the Sylvia Plath effect, that poets go insane more than any other type of artist because they don't attribute their work to themselves, because they're more likely than anyone to just see it as like something going on in their heads.
But that's the only way you can really explain it, you know what I mean? Without getting like deep and into it. But that's how I sort of like write it, and I'm writing something down and I'm going, slow down, I haven't written that line yet. That another line's coming. I know you're doing it in your own head. I know there's no magical sort of little angel doing it to me. So yeah, that's the only way I can really explain it.
Well, if your influences weren't other poets you said you didn't read a lot of, you've mentioned rugby songs, but what other things like bands or type of media did you get inspired by?
I've always liked lyrics. I've always liked to, all the lyrics of songs and all that. Well, I'll tell you, the first album I ever bought was Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars by David Bowie. And I had an old record player where you lift the arm up and it'd just play one side of the record over and over and over and over again. I had to put headphones on and go to sleep with them. And the next night I played the B side of it. And I put the headphones on and go to sleep. You started any song off that and I can do it now all the way through. But, no, it's lyrics out of songs and all that. But David Bowie wrote some cracking lyrics. You know what I mean? Been smoking a few funny cigarettes when he wrote it, I suspect. But really wrote some cracking lyrics, you know what I mean? I do like band lyrics and songs.
It's interesting that you said that you originally wanted to be like in a band because Simon Armitage once said all poets are kind of like failed rock stars, and I've always kind of asserted that was true about myself as well, where I would have always wished I could have had the musical talent to be in a band, but never would have.
Well, you've got the poets who are recognised in bands. Patti Smith.
Love Patti Smith.
Yeah. She's just been on tour. But Patti Smith, she's a poet. There was another guy, you might know him. He was knocking around the New York scene at the same time as Patti Smith, called Jim Carroll.
Oh, I haven't heard of him.
He did a book called The Baseboard Diaries, and he's got an album out as well that he did himself with Lenny Kaye out of Patti Smith's band, plays the guitar on it. It's well worth looking up. He died very young. He had a single called "These Are People Who Have Died." It's like, all his mates, every one of them sort of threw himself off buildings and all this. But he at that time, that was a punky sort of ranter. I would say he could be if we were going to put him into a ranting, he could have come with the ranters, no problem, without guitars or anything. He could have done it.
That actually leads me perfectly into the next question I wanted to ask, which was, while you were kind of participating in the scene at the moment, like, did you consider it the ranting scene? How did you all come together? Would you look at a poet and think that is a ranter or not a ranter? How have you guys kind of now come to be known as the ranters?
The ranters, the original ranters started in. There was Attila, a stockbroker, who was in Harlow. But the basic, I think he'd agree with himself. It all started in Bradford with Jules. There was Jules Denby, Little Brother, Seething Wells, Wild Willie Beckett, and Little Dave. And they were all poets from Bradford at the time. And then there was Attila the stockbroker down in Harlow. And they started doing little gigs and all that, and he was doing gigs, but he was in a band and all that as well, Attila. But then they started going out together. Swells and Attila did a joint single. Little Brother was and it just took off. After the first singles, they had Swells and Attila had the first single out, and then there was Rising Suns of Ranting Birds, which was Seething Wells and Little Brother. And it just absolutely just went, wow. We were like a flavour of the month. We were, you get the comedians go up and comedians are saying, we are the new rock and roll. We were the new rock and roll. You know what I mean? And Swell said at the time, and I think that was right, we did to poetry what the Sex Pistols did to the music. We made it more accessible to people and took it away from being, And the Poetry Secretariat were really good about it, because I lived in a house in Bradford that was owned by Nick Totchek, who was a really big poet. And Swells called him the godfather of ranting poetry. But he was going well before us. It was me, Seething Wells, and Nick Totchek in this house in Bradford. And we got a phone call from the London Poetry Secretariat, who were based in Earl's Court at the time. And the girl says, is everybody there? I went, yeah, it's Nick and Swells are both here. She says, well, you know it's April? I says, yes. She says, well, I've just got my grant through. What I'll do is I'll send it up to you, and what you don't use, can you send me back? Because they were sponsoring all our gigs. They were really heavily sponsoring our gigs, as the Poetry Secretariat did at the time. And, you know, to them down there, I really thank them, you know what I mean? Because we were getting nothing for gigs. I was hitchhiking from Manchester down to London to do a gig for 20 quid and having nowhere to stay, then going to Hendon on the last tube and hitchhiking back home. I could tell you some stories about hitchhiking home. You're like swimming.
Well, I do want to hear a lot about like the touring experience and everything, because now if I go to a poetry reading, it's pretty like very tame compared to what it sounds like you guys were doing. But to be honest, what you guys were doing sounds a lot more interesting and fun. So what are some memorable like touring experiences you've had, or describe what a typical gig might be like?
One of the big gigs was at Queen's Hall in Leeds, where I was in 2,500 punk rockers shouting, "Get up," and other words. And that was great. But touring-wise, we did the Intolerance tour, which was Seething Wells, Nick Totchek, me, and a lad called Kevin Cisse, who plays guitar and does really funny songs. That was a really great tour, because we got on basically really well together, you know what I mean? We put up with each other, we knew all each other worked. But that tour is the only Ranters tour. It's the only one ever been where there's been 3 Ranters touring together. There's been a couple with 2 few gigs, but we did like a national tour. And we had an album out, and we had loads of other stuff as well. But that was the best tour, great experience. And I learned a lot of Nick's like stagecraft, microphone stuff, because I just jumped in at the deep end. And as we did, we used to jump up at punk gigs and just grab the mic and go, wah! And I toured with friends of mine who were still friends, still talk to them on the internet. I toured with an American hardcore punk band called Toxic Reasons. They were from Indianapolis. DOA from Canada, done gigs with them. I've done gigs with a band called Bad Brains.
Oh, I know Bad Brains,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Joseph's still a mate of mine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Dr. No, and they're all still mates. Jello Biafra, out the Dead Kennedys, the first the Ranters Revenge gig, which is like what we're doing tonight. It was the big Tiller did, Ranters Revenge, was at Wapping. Jello Biafra out the Dead Kennedys put the money up.
So if you rented about certain things then, what do you rant about now? Or how has your poetry changed? Like, what gets you fired up now?
Probably like the war in Iraq, anything. Just people still getting the wrong end of the wrong end of the stick. It's not changed, you know what I mean? The poor are getting poorer and the rich are getting richer, and it's they're going to build a museum. They want £15 million to build a museum to Thatcher. They've already got a museum tour in this country. They're called food banks. Sorry, political again.
No, don't. You can go as political as you want.
No, just so everybody gets a fair share of everything, and it not just being, you know, everybody should be all right. There should be enough food for people, and there should be enough money to go around. You know what I mean? Why should like just a few people have it all? Just keep having more and more of it, and no one should spread it around a bit. I don't advocate, you know, get a tank and roll down the Mall and blow up the palace or anything like that. You know, there must be some way that people they got in this country. They got 0-hour contracts where people are not. They don't even get enough money to feed themselves. It's just stupid. You know what I mean?
Would you say that you and the other ranters at the time had like this common political vision as well, that you were all kind of trying to rant about?
Yeah, a good percentage of us, yeah. I would say, yeah. We're all like basic socialists. I would say all of the ranters were socialists. You know what I mean? There were any. We didn't have any neo-Nazi ranting poets or anything like that. We didn't like them. They weren't let into the club.
Yeah, you were talking earlier to me about beating them up and everything. Do you have any good stories about that?
No, officer. No. They used to come. They used to come to the gigs and cause trouble. Like they're well known for it. Well, the NF had a hit list with the get these commie so and so's rascals, and Billy Bagg used to phone up the house and go to Swells. Aha, you've gone down the list. He said, I'm number one this week. We just treated it as a joke. Because, you know what I mean, they basically are a joke in this country. But there is nasty ones out there who should be watched, and keep your eyes peeled, kids, and if you see them...
Well, I mean, some of the potential, like, not violent stories, but, like, tension stories I've heard about, or even the ranting poet who was killed when he went back to Jamaica. It must have seemed like there was really, like, a price to saying the words he was saying.
Michael Smith you're talking about.
Yeah.
Michael wasn't a ranter. Michael was a poet.
Okay.
He was a friend of Ranting Poet Johnson, but he was a really good friend of a ranting poet called Benjamin Zephaniah. And Benjamin was doing Edinburgh Festival at the time when Michael got killed, and was, you know what I mean, well, of course it upset him, you know what I mean, but like, but Michael Smith was a great lad, and did lots of gigs over here, was well liked, you know what I mean, but you got to think at the time, don't forget they shot at Bob Marley as well, because it was the political factions in Jamaica at the time. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but there was a lot of, that's what it was all about. It was political parties and all that. I mean, when you get like Bob Marley's got to leave Jamaica and come and live over here, not in Gate for a while, you know what I mean? Because of it. But Michael Smith that was part of the thing that Michael Smith got killed. It's he should get. I don't mind a good argument over politics, but I don't think he should start shooting people over it.
Seems a bit dramatic, doesn't it?
All right, you can give him a slap if you don't agree, but not shoot or kill him or anything like that over it. You know, it's not that. Not that much, I don't think.
And I think one of my last questions is, so you said that you don't usually come down to London or even give interviews. What is making you want to do this type of event? And it's super exciting that we're able to have you reading and everything tonight.
It's I've not seen a lot of the people that are playing tonight. I've not seen them for a long time. I mean, Tim must be 25, 26 years. Attila a bit less. Jules about the same time. Little Dave, I've not seen him for 30 years at least. John Cooper Clarke I've seen recently. I know John, and I've gigged with John Cooper Clarke a lot. But yeah, nice to see him all. And I think it's nice that they've all gone. Yeah, I'll do it. You know what I mean? It's a bit of nostalgia, but it's so we still got it. The ones that are still doing it, sort of thing.
When would you have said then the ranting era kind of dissipated?
Well, about 82 it started taking off. It was going on a bit before then. Attila and Swells were doing, and little brother Jules were doing stuff. But it took off in 82, and it went all the way through the 80s, 90s. About 95, it started being a bit. They moved on. You know what I mean? It was a lot of gigs, and then I started doing the comedy thing as well, sticking that in it, but still keeping the. Most of my set is still basically poems, but down as funny poems.
So I have one last question, and then I think it'll be ready to be wrapped up, and it's a bit of a hard question. If you had to define ranting poetry yourself, because I've heard a lot of people say different types of what ranting poetry is to them and how they define it, what is ranting poetry to you?
It was working class kids getting up and doing it, and taking it away from it being something, you know, it's art. You can't touch this. It's poetry, and it must be kept in this little room where we can tell it to our friends and who we like. But you scumbags can bugger off. But these scumbags took the Doc Martens through the front door and took over and made it more accessible. You've got to think at the time when we was doing the Ranting Poetry thing, there was kids going to school who knew the poets that the teachers didn't know. And the other thing is, they were alive.
And thank you so much for sitting down. I can't wait to hear your gig tonight.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.